Storm. Critics up in arms this time over a New York Times report about the president wanting the Justice Department to prosecute Hillary Clinton as well as former FBI Director James Comey. Some in the media sounding the alarm about Trump's intentions.
And this is a defining moment in the history of the Trump presidency, because this is a demonstration of his unfitness to be president of the United States, of his abuse of presidential power, of his embrace of authoritarianism.
Now, this news, I want to be clear with you, is a scale way beyond anything else we have seen in legal controversies with Donald Trump.
This is what happens in authoritarian countries. The president orders, the president, the leader, orders the investigation and prosecution of his political enemies.
But supporters argue that Trump has been saying this for a long time, like during the presidential debate 2 years ago.
If I win, I am going to instruct my attorney general to get a special prosecutor to look into your situation, because there has never been so many lies, so much deception.
By the way.
So, Dana, you have a situation here where people, like Alan Dershowitz today on Steve's show said, you can't do this. You do not use you don't use the criminal justice system to punish your political opponents. What do you think?
Well, I think that so you can say a lot of things, right, inside a White House. You can say, I want this to happen. And then you might have a general counsel that's very wise and smart and clever, like Don McGahn, who says, it's not a good idea, Mr. President. We're not going to do that. And so his lawyer is Bill Burke. He's being represented. Bill Burke is, full disclosure, a good friend of mine. But he says McGahn was not going to comment on the legal advice he gave to the president. But he noted that the president never, to his knowledge, ordered anyone prosecute Hillary Clinton or James Comey. So again, it's like, so he might have brought it up, and like maybe like you're frustrated, like, well, they're going to investigate me, like, investigate her. I want you to investigate her. Sir, we can't do that. Okay, fine. Like, we're not going to do that, and they move on. When they say that this is what happens in a dictatorship. No, what happens in a dictatorship is that the prosecution actually happens, and it's not a fair trial. There is no due process, and that person is immediately thrown in jail or extradited or something like that. That's not what happened in this case. So that's what I would say.
And Steve, what would you say to people who say, why is he discussing this? And then others said, as you saw on the tape, that he's been saying this during the campaign. He was saying, oh, yeah, right. if I'm president, I'm going to get my special prosecutor. But McGahn and others told him, this could result in your impeachment, Mr. President.
Sure. And we had, when the conversation you're talking about, Juan, where we had Alan Dershowitz in the studio this morning, he said, it's not impeachable, but it's just dumb. He should not have done that. But I tell you what, he really amped it up, the then candidate, Donald Trump. Because it's one thing for you to say it when you're out on the campaign trail, but then when you were sitting or standing right next to the person and saying, if I win, big trouble, that's something. But that's Donald Trump.
But it sounds like rhetoric on the campaign trail, but when you're actually proposing, I think is what set people off. So, Jedediah, you hear these claims of authoritarianism, you hear people saying this is worse than since Watergate. What do you think?
It's ridiculous. I mean, what's the story here? I'm still trying to figure out what the story is. He didn't prosecute anybody, actually. You have his legal representation coming out and saying, yeah, we didn't hear him say that he was actually going to prosecute anybody. It's just so interesting that now the New York Times has gone from stories where they actually thought they were going to find collusion. Now they've decided, well, we didn't find the collusion we were looking for. So now they're writing outrage stories about things he might have said that might have happened. And now you have cable news heads exploding over this. I don't see the story. He didn't prosecute anybody. He didn't do anything about it. It's not a story if somebody says, oh, yeah, I'm going to do this, and then nothing actually happens. I don't know. What are we supposed to be upset about?
You mean even if you have to restrain the president, the most powerful man?
First of all, how do you even know that you actually had to restrain him? This is taking
Well, Don McGahn wrote a memo, so the memo exists.
He wrote a memo. Okay, so, but somebody saying, and also, like, it's not just because he wasn't just saying these things because these people were, for example, Comey, for example, oh, these are his adversaries. He was saying it because he had legitimate concerns about Hillary Clinton and bleaching a server and taking a hammer to a server and saying, listen, I'm going to, I think this should be looked into. And that was a point that resonated with every American sitting at home saying, well, Comey did seems unreasonable. What she did seems unreasonable. And it was a selling point for him to say, this doesn't look right. right, how this went down, and I think it should be looked into. That's very different from him mandating, prosecuting his enemies, and actually following through like a dictator. He's not a dictator. Nothing about this is dictatorial.
Okay, so Greg, what do you make of this?
If you took every outrage that the media embraced that was born from Trump venting, you would have nothing. All right? His venting is defined by thinking out loud and wondering what possibility is out there that could solve something that bugs him. And then somebody says something to him and he goes, oh, okay. And then he finds something else. Right. Trump is a salesman and a businessman. And what do when you enter a new job? You ask a bunch of questions. Some of the questions are incredibly stupid. And that is why Donald Trump is different than anybody in the media, because the media is too insecure to ask stupid questions. It's almost a superhero power that Trump has. His willingness not to feel shame when he's wrong and when he asks a dumb question. Hey, can I prosecute her? You can't prosecute her. Oh, okay. There's this kind of amnesia that I read about where you forget whatever is absorbed that same day. So every new day is new. The media has Trump amnesia. They wake up every day as though it's the first day of the presidency, and they freak out. In fact, I don't know why his critics are so fat. Because they're always up in arms. They should be so fit. Yeah. They should be so fit because they're always like this, screaming. They should be like on the cover of Men's Health. Instead, they're just bloated. How are they so bloated when they're so screaming all the time?
Well, can I add one thing on this? Because Barack Obama campaigned on closing Gitmo.
Yes.
Do you remember?
Yeah.
Okay, and do you guys remember the other story that on his first day in the Oval Office after he's sworn in, he's sitting around there and he's like, okay, where's the paperwork?
Yeah.
I'm going to close Gitmo.
Yeah.
And his staff says, oh, sir, you actually can't do that.
Yeah.
That's actually something that's go through Congress. He's like, what do you mean I can't do that?
Everybody does this.
You can't do that because the law says, and that's why you have smart people around you that can advise you on things that you might not necessarily know about that are detailed in the law.
So, Greg, just a quick response to what you said. I think that the liberal side would say, are we normalizing what is very unusual behavior, the president trying to use the Justice Department to punish his enemies?
No, I think that, the word normalizing should not be normalized. I hate that word. Number two, I think we're seeing the Trump amnesia, the psychology of this, is people are exhausted by him, okay? Yeah. And so here's an experiment. If you erased Trump from today, you'd have the largest peacetime expansion probably in history, dramatic declines in poverty and violence worldwide. Aside from Syria and Afghanistan, things are looking pretty good. There's a lot of prosperity. There's a lot of fresh ideas and new technology. It's a simpler but somehow complicated life with technology. So my point is, despite this, there's a sense of doom around the corner. Everybody thinks something awful is happening, even though the physical evidence is telling you there's optimism everywhere. And the reason is because all of this is a psychological problem. This is a psychological problem. It certainly isn't a physical one.
All right. I guess that's why, that's why he has like 30-something% of.
No, it's actually higher than that. You misrepresented that.
All right. And then there's President Trump saying it's a no-brainer on who he thinks should be named Time Magazine's Person of the Year.
It's called Person of the Year, right? It's no longer Man of the Year, right? Okay. I don't know. That's up to Time Magazine. I've been there before. I can't imagine anybody else other than Trump.
Even you find that funny.
Well,
you find that funny.
So wait, is he serious?
I mean, I think he's partially serious. I do.
I
think that's just how he is, though. This is like people who don't get that still just don't get Trump.
But
that's just how he feels. He feels like, hey, listen, I'm the president. I'm doing a whole bunch of cool stuff. I could be Man of the Year. I don't think they're going to pick him. But
one, Person of the Year or Man of the Year or Thing of the Year, I looked it up, and apparently it is the greatest influence on the events of the year. Who has influenced more things in the past year?
But maybe on the merits it'll be him.
Could be fire.
But it's going to be Pelosi, right?
Really?
I mean, she's going to get.
I
just think that she's going to get Person of the Year. They're at 39 seats flipped. She's going to be speaker again. It's not a man. It's a woman. I'm just telling you, on the merits, Trump might deserve it, but I am putting my mark down.
And you're rarely wrong on this. I will say, what's great? I thought we were going to talk about the Correspondents' Dinner. There's another example of where Trump made something better. The dinner has now returned to its roots, which is about the importance of journalism.
Yep.
After decades of celebrity worship, it was the curse of the press. You know, the insecure and homely in the media, you know, always wanted to be near the cool kids. Trump cured them of that.
Yep, I agree.
And now that they don't have a comic after him,
yes,
he's going to
And
go.
then he said he might go, and then he'll be the
Might
funniest
go, yeah.
speech they've had.
Right.
He'll be the funniest speech. Yeah. I'm sure it'll just be uproarious. I can see it.
You will be laughing,
You'll
Juan.
laugh.
You will be.
I can't laugh,
might
you
be
know, because if
incredulity,
people say
but you'll
Juan was
laugh.
laughing at the president.
No,
can't
laugh
do it.
with the
Laugh with the
president.
president.
President Trump standing firm in support.
My sweater. I should not have raised my hand. I raised my hand. See, you know what it's from? It's from working out. It's working out. I'm pumping up.
You know what happened?
What?
So I was in the green room before, and I said, "This is Greg's sweater." Oh my God.
All right.
Well
So,
played.
did the prince kill Khashoggi? Maybe he did. Maybe he didn't. That's from Trump, causing today's hair-burning media freakout, which happens whenever Trump tells the blunt truth about a policy we were okay with well before him. So now you're pissed off over the Saudis? After decades of human rights abuses and terror enabling, this is what gets your goat? According to Ben Rhodes, in 2009, when Obama went to Riyadh, the Saudi king gave each staffer a pile of jewels. And the first couple got 100,000 pounds worth of baubles, which were accepted and then sent to the National Archives. That beats a washer-dryer on Price is Right. But even back then, we knew Saudi Arabia, they were different. But they were allies, and allies can suck. So maybe the boss's son had Khashoggi offed, or maybe not. Which is it? Think hard. It's a card game. If you say the prince is guilty, you're committing poker suicide by folding while holding all the best cards. Sure, playing your moral ace might please everyone in the media, but winning their approval wins America nothing. It just wastes a great opportunity. But hold off and say, maybe, maybe not, maybe not. You come out ahead. And the pot you want to win impacts your country's happiness. If you spent your life playing this game, keeping your cards close and waiting, you know America has the Saudis over a barrel. Millions of barrels, really. And in negotiations, that means you can get something big from them that you couldn't get before. Like what? Middle East progress, a chance for peace in Palestine and Israel, the ability to influence oil prices. Who knows? For sure, it will be more than a pile of dumb jewels. All right, Dana, this is another example of what I say. We'll see what happens. Trump is going, we'll see what happens. Like, if the Saudis don't offer America something really big, then he can go back in 6 months and say, they killed that guy. He can't hurt. He's got that option.
Maybe you're right. Maybe you're not. Exclamation point.
We may never know.
I think the exclamation point was the one I was like, God, a little.
But that's how he talks.
That is how he talks. Right. Okay. Look, you're right. Friends can sometimes make it really hard to defend them.
Tell me about it.
Okay. I know what they're talking about. But no, that's the thing. Obviously it's a complex situation. The end result was maybe always going to be this.
Yeah.
Okay. But then the way the statement reads, like, communications is important, right? And yeah, maybe he's speaking to a certain audience, but you're speaking to lots of different audiences all at once. And then the tweet today where he says oil prices getting lower,
Yes.
great, and he thanks Saudi Arabia
Yes.
for that.
Yeah.
Over a barrel?
Yeah.
Maybe that she was on the other foot. And if oil prices were the real intention, making the tough decision to get out of the Iran deal would have been the wrong one. If oil prices are the real intention.
I don't think it
which
is.
I don't think it is, but right, because it's complex.
It is.
But that doesn't say that in these tweets, and that is a tough thing. I think that human rights is in our national security's interest. I think this is obviously very difficult. I also feel like the president could have gotten more out of this. You're saying that we should get something out of this, but why would we get anything now when he's already said everything's cool?
No, I think he's working on it.
I think, well, maybe so, maybe behind the scenes, but wouldn't it have been great if we had found out today that Saudi had released all the women that they had put in detention because they had the temerity to get out there and drive before the regulations were allowed? Or maybe like all these other things that we could have asked for them to do from a human rights standpoint?
I think our national security interests are our national security interests.
Right, so why not
that's
use
a
this
hard,
to get,
that's a hard reality.
To get more stuff out of him?
That's a hard. I think what we're going for is something in the Middle East that's bigger than oil.
Didn't he say the same thing about Russia and Vladimir Putin? We need him. He's going to be a helpful ally.
I would use North Korea as an example.
And now he's saying that. But the fact is, Greg, it's not about our national interest to have our morals, our principles.
That's
just
part.
Go. I mean,
you're looking at the tiniest part of this.
Hang on, let me finish. we're saying to people who are dictators and who are murderers, you know what, you can do business with us. It's all transactional as long as you promise us more jobs and more oil. But hey, oh, wait a second, it's not true. He says it's $350 billion, tens of thousands of jobs. Every fact checker in America said that's not true. The transaction is one-sided. We are saying to them, you know what, go right ahead. And to me, it's unacceptable, Greg.
You know what? Here's the way I look at it, Steve. He took the hard way out. He could have virtue signaled and make all of you guys happy, but he didn't. He doesn't need to satisfy Morning Blow, you know? Instead, he embraces the role of the cold, hard parent who is right. If you just focus on this one incident and blow the future, it doesn't make sense.
Well, when you look at what is happening right now in Washington, there are a lot of lawmakers who are saying, you know, we want sanctions.
Yeah.
And President Trump said...
they have the sanctions on 12 people who are slated to be killed. So what do the sanctions matter?
Well, but the president says, you want sanctions, Congress? Then pass sanctions.
Right.
I think I heard Rush Limbaugh on the radio yesterday say something about, you know, people in Europe are saying, well, what's the president going to do? We're waiting on him to do something. Well, why doesn't Europe do something?
They did. Like Germany today ended their arms sales, which, and that's not necessarily in their best interest either. It's not in your best interest for a country that you need in the Middle East to not buy your weapons. You want them to buy your weapons.
Right, but so what is the president going to do? I think he's doing it. He's a businessman. I think ultimately, how many times have you heard businessmen say, it's nothing personal.
Yeah.
It's just business.
Yeah.
And in this case, it's America's business.
I think he could have done that. I agree with you that he looked at it from the perspective of a businessman. I think he could have done that, though, and made the statement better. Had he done the very same thing that he did, but within that statement been harder when it came to the murder of a journalist, be less tolerant of that, not see, there were angles of this statement where he almost seemed like he was taking the Saudi Crown Prince's version of the story over the intelligence community and what they're finding. You can't do that. So if he wants to maintain that this is a strategic ally, if he wants to come at it from the angle of a businessman, I think that's all okay to an extent. But you have to acknowledge that there's a whole bunch of people looking at this that want the message sent that if a regime violates human rights extensively, they expect an American president to have a reaction to that that's substantial and makes you feel like, you know what, he cares about our economic interests, but he also cares about the values that the whole country is built on.
You know who agrees with you? Turkey. And, you know, I'm so happy to see Turkey come out against human rights abuses and come after us over that.
But you know what? It's not just Turkey. I mean, you could say that.
It's a lot of turkeys.
But there's, especially this time of year. But what strikes me is the number of Republicans.
Yeah.
And normally, with President Trump being as popular as he is among Republicans, you don't see the Senate and the Congress step up to him. But what we're seeing is Marco Rubio, Rand Paul, Lindsey Graham, Bob Corker, Jeff Flake. I mean, these guys are saying this is wrong. We are Americans. We stand for human rights.
Yes. I wish they had a broader perspective, but oh well.
Nadi will not face felony charges over a domestic abuse allegation. The LA County District Attorney passing the case off to city prosecutors who could still charge him with a misdemeanor. This comes after Avenatti's legal team attacked his accuser's credibility in a letter to the LAPD. They claim she was drunk at the time and say an alleged mark on her leg was most likely caused by acne medication. This move being called hypocritical because last month Avenatti railed against the Senate Judiciary Committee's treatment of his client, Julie Swetnick, telling Vanity Fair, quote, "You don't call them a liar, you don't say they're not credible at the same time that you prevent any reasonable investigation into their allegations." Hypocritical, Greg, his treatment of Kavanaugh and now the expectation he has of...
He's just an awful person. I mean, calling him hypocritical, he's a lawyer. I mean, and lawyers, they know all the tricks. It's like they have the instructions to a game board of life that you don't have. So when he writes the letter to the police, he mentions apparently that Accutane had a role in this. Only a lawyer would do that. And he mentioned some other syndromes that she might have had and issues with plastic surgery. So he might possibly get off, and maybe he should, because we believe in justice and due process. Unlike when he targeted Kavanaugh, he's getting better treatment than he gave Kavanaugh, and I only hope that helps him grow in some way. I think he's done as a personality and a politician, but I felt that way about Al Sharpton after Tawana Brawley and the Freddie fashion mark, you know, tragedy.
You know, it's interesting, Juan, because with Kavanaugh, there was no evidence that was brought forth. And here you have sworn declaration from her in addition to a police report. Supposedly you have evidence of marks on her body. There was a restraining order that she was able to get. And he's saying, you know, I want a full and fair investigation with all of this stuff out there. And yet he didn't apply that to somebody who had accusations come out from X amount of years ago where no one was able to bring forth any amount of evidence other than the sworn testimony.
No,
there was nothing
to the contrary, I think he brought forth a woman that he said had some evidence. What he said turned out not to be true.
Right.
And of course, we know that Professor Ford sat down and gave testimony. She put herself directly forward.
Right.
In the case of Avenatti, in this case, I'm understanding that he still may face some charges.
Yep. It's been referred to the Senate, to the FBI.
Right. Well, no. I mean, he could be facing misdemeanor charges. I don't know exactly all the details. As you say, it's just breaking. But to me, the issue is, should she be heard? And of course she should be heard. If that's the charge against Avenatti, I don't think that anybody's saying we're not going to listen to this woman, don't bring her. I mean, that's why I said yesterday, I don't think it's fair to Kavanaugh because this is immediate. This is right here, right now. Let's hear the woman. Let's consider the charges. In the Kavanaugh case, these things were when he was a teenage guy. He must be in his 50s, right? So, I mean, that's the difference.
Now he's seeing, though, the problem with a Believe Her hashtag on Instant One, which is that you should have an investigation, that you should go through a process, and you can't just believe someone, man or woman, Steve, if you just, you know, without evidence and without going through process. So now I wonder if on the other side of this, he's saying, you know, he's having to make the very arguments that he was fighting against when it came to Kavanaugh, and he's having to make those arguments to defend himself now.
I was talking to somebody down in Washington about these developments today, and they were talking just about the political component because, you know, he's been mentioned among the 36 Democrats who might run for president of the United States. And this is a D.C. Republican observer. He said he should run. It would be the best thing that could happen to the Republican Party. He said the Republicans need him on the campaign trail with as much exposure as during the Stormy Daniels days. Keep him on cable. Every time he does appear, he helps the Republican Party.
Yeah. I mean,
but that's exactly why he won't be.
Did you
think, like, to Greg's point that he's done is that they want to try to help the Democrat win in 2020. So Michael Avenatti is not going to be it. And because if they think that Avenatti is a detriment to the Democrats or could help Republicans, he's not going to be much.
But you know,
I said maybe they set him up.
But here's the Dems.
Yeah.
You know, Greg's good. But the other side of this is, guess what? Somebody who had relations with porn stars who make charges against them and is embarrassing incidents. Oh, gosh. And he got elected president.
Wait a minute. He never made charges against Stormy. He paid her off. In fact, that's a great point. No. He treated Stormy with the respect she deserved. It was a business transaction, unlike this doofus who actually used Stormy for his career, used this other woman, Swetnick, for his career, used his victims to get himself a spotlight. All Trump did was hire her for what she does and paid her. And what she did was wrong. She reneged on a contract.
Even before this, though, before this story came out, we don't know what happened here. It has to be investigated. Dana, do you actually think he would have had any chance? Because the way he handled Swetnick, the way there were contradictory statements, it was referred to the FBI for potential criminal investigation just for that. But just his demeanor and the way he is, I didn't think he was formidable.
Politically?
Yeah.
I don't. Look, I think when they're going to have upwards of 35 candidates that want to throw their hat in the ring, I just think that he's not going to emerge out of that necessarily.
But, well, you never know.
You know what? The Democrats want a fighter, right?
But he doesn't have
Avenatti was advertising himself as someone who could go toe-to-toe and throw bombs with Trump.
Yeah.
But I don't think that Democrats should go down that path. Do you?
Yeah, no.
That's why you won't see him.
Yeah. Well, don't go anywhere. Wild Card Wednesday is coming up.
Oh, my favorite. Wild Card Wednesday. Look at that, Steve Doocy.
Oh, wow.
So, Steve, let me explain. We each picked a topic and put them in this hat.
Yes.
None of us know the other stories.
Right.
Okay, so I'm going to pick them out of the hat, and then we're going to read it real quickly, and they're going to discuss.
All right.
Ramen restaurant has focus booths for avoiding human contact. Ichiran is a Japanese ramen noodle restaurant. It features 46 focus booths, which allow guests to have some time alone with their food. Customers also write their orders on a piece of paper so they don't even have to interact with a waiter. I chose this story. And I am for this because have you ever seen people eat ramen noodles?
Yes.
Yes.
I don't want to see it.
It's a lot of slurping.
I don't want to hear
Be
it.
careful.
I don't wanna
You know what?
see
You know
it.
what's funny? Walk down 6th Avenue when people are sitting during their lunch and eating, and they're facing the windows. Almost the entire part of their face is dead except for their mouth. They're just eating. It's the strangest. They're just chewing, and you're walking up and you look, and people are just chewing.
What is going on?
But honestly,
Stop.
I think this is
Help
not a
us.
bad idea. I mean, I think you could. I don't understand that you have to write down your order so you don't have to interact with people. You like to people, right?
I like to have a meal and be social. This is the polar opposite of this. I'm going to take my meal.
What about ramen noodle meal?
Well, there is some slurping
Yes.
and stuff like that, but
Yeah.
I'm okay. I'm on TV. People see me do crazy stuff all the time.
Jedediah, you like
I
this?
try to avoid people as much as possible. So for me, the not having to even order, that was the best part.
Juan, what do you think? You're very
Juan's like,
skeptical
what do you-
here.
I just wonder, so how do you go on a date?
Well,
think
you
it's
wouldn't
if you're
take
by
your date
yourself.
to this restaurant.
Hey,
There's
honey,
other restaurants.
Hey, I really want to go out with you. So you sit over there, I'm going to be over here, and we won't see each other.
Could be a
It's
great
happening
day.
in Japan. You know what their birth rate is over there. Not good. Not good. Okay, Wildcard Wednesday. UK school bans Canada Goose not goats. Canada Goose coats. Other expensive styles so that kids won't feel pressured. A British high school has banned students from wearing Canada Goose and other designer winter coats in an attempt to poverty-proof its campus. The school's head teacher said students had approached school leaders about the pressure on families and the pressure on themselves to wear particular branded coats.
Yeah, this is
why
mine.
uniforms are a good idea, right?
This is mine, but it makes me mad because this is not prepping kids for real life. I mean, you're going to grow up and you're going to be surrounded by a bunch of people that wear better clothes than you, make more money than you, that walk down the street and sometimes look better than you. And you got to start
me.
young. Not you,
It has
of
yet
course.
to happen.
The rest of us. And you got to kind of build that tough skin in these kids. I mean,
I disagree.
I'm not
I
into
disagree.
it.
I think I'm for uniforms. And I'm also thinking that if you're a poor kid, look, there's enough on you. And I've seen schools, districts where they say to the kids, enough with the fancy sneakers that cost $100 or $200 because you want to show off to your friends. That's not what you show off about. Show off about your intellect or your discipline. I'm all for that. I just think that, if kids use this as a status symbol, it's wrong values, and I'm glad that the schools do.
Greg, you lived in the UK for a while. This doesn't surprise you, I presume.
Well, I understand what Juan is saying, but I do believe that I hate rules that are dictated by the mob or by the by the group, because you should have the choice to dress however you feel. Although I am a big fan of uniforms, especially at certain clubs I go to.
Yes, yes.
Did you guys have uniforms?
Your
The
thoughts?
people who like
I wore uniforms
No, I
for
didn't.
8
I
years.
wish I had.
Because I had a uniform and I hated it.
I
think I hated it because I felt like I didn't have a chance to figure. Like clothes is
We had
sometimes how
we
you
had
figure out
casual
who
Fridays
you are.
though. at St.
Clothes, take up to a time.
Listen,
you
I
should
would
be
take one
studying.
now though. because
The
it's
only
less work.
uniform I ever wore growing up was the Boy Scouts.
Oh, that's
And then when I was in the Future Farmers of America, I had
Yeah,
the
the vest.
blue jacket.
Yeah, the
Oh,
jacket. That's
yeah.
right. Those are very popular. All right, Wildcard Wednesday. University staff told not to use "don't" or frightening capital letters. This is also in the UK, of course, honestly. The UK said the professors should not use certain words or syntax in case they trigger anxiety in their students and lead to academic failure. The use of capital letters has been banned, as well as the overuse of the words do and don't. This is so
This
dumb.
was my choice. I was just, it's just obviously so sad. We are definitely breeding a certain kind of individual that will not survive in the outside world.
Right. Right.
Look at the banner underneath us right now. It's all in caps.
Oh,
Capital offense!
this is Juan. Your thoughts?
I think this, it's almost like that was made for Greg, right? Because of Greg's complaint about the academy in this country. But this is Britain, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't get it. It seems silly. It seems overly protective. This goes back to what you were saying about uniforms, I guess. People should live in the real world, because if you think a professor telling you do it is going to tough, try a boss who could actually fire you.
Yeah.
How about an idea of a place that sells hats with Trump sayings, and it's called all caps?
That could be like for the Washington hockey team,
Yes.
the Capitals.
Oh, wow. All
Can't
caps.
support that. All right, this last one. Portraiting woman dubbed the Grinch caught on camera swiping packages from Michigan homes. How dare she? Police posted a video of this woman. She was filmed stealing people's deliveries from their homes during the holiday season. The woman was deemed grinchy by the Sterling
it's
Heights
blocked.
Police Department.
Remove the lower
Who
third.
have now identified the woman, but not
Jeez.
released her information to the public.
Well, by process of elimination, you can tell this was mine. And the reason I watched this is because a month ago we installed one of these doorbells.
Right.
And so now every time somebody comes to my house,
that drive you nuts?
I get an
Wait a minute.
I get a
think
notification.
it's
George
Thomas
Washington?
Jefferson.
That is George Washington.
George Washington.
Came to our house, and my daughter was at work, and she called me up and she said, "Dad, it's 4:16 in the afternoon. George Washington is at the front door, and he's got a bottle of wine."
Wow.
That is so weird.
As it turns out, it was Halloween, and the neighbor always comes over. And
I thought that was you know what? Come on, it was a stripogram. Come on, Steve.
You never know.